kind of do. We try to make the unconscious conscious, you know. We try to talk about the issues that are really people are talking about. And I oftentimes have people come up to me in the street and say, you know, how come you're not doing this? Or how come you don't write about that? And sometimes I tell them we already did that, but that was 6 months ago and you've forgotten. But the thing is that the accusation is you'll never survive. And 40 years later, we have survived, and there's people who are still telling me that you can't. So I like winning arguments, and sometimes just the persistence makes that happen. So, back in the 80s, after we first started the newspaper, a friend of mine by the name of Frank Mayer, his adopted daughter used to like party with a band called the Black Flag. They used to come over and when he was gone on a trip, they would go raid his liquor locker. So in the early 80s, when we were really struggling as a newspaper, we did this fundraiser, and it was at this once strip club on North Pacific Avenue, where Jimmy Smack had his a dance troupe, and the name Jimmy Smack means exactly what it means, okay? And so this notorious, punk band, Black Flag, did a fundraiser for Random Links News, which was documented many years later, in a little pamphlet booklet that got put out about punk music in San Pedro. It was at that particular event that I was introduced to a woman who was called Linda B. And for a long time, I didn't know that she was Linda Bukowski, married to the poet. And for many years, I had witnessed Mr. Bukowski almost on a daily basis down at the post office. He had a P.O. box that was just down the way from the newspaper's P.O. box. And nobody at the post office knew who the hell Charles Bukowski was, and he liked it that way. He could be completely anonymous outside of the whole, LA scene, the Hollywood scene, and by the time he had moved to San Pedro, he had actually made it as a writer. He drove a BMW and owned a house with a pool, and had, I think by that time, Barfly had been made, okay? And, he'd gotten paid very well for, the royalties on that. So, I'd see Bukowski almost daily. And I would never, ever, sort of violate his space and say, oh, by the way, I'm a great fan of yours, or something like that, and go up to him and any of that. But one fatal day on 6th Street, across from the Warner Grand Theater, Linda B. I encountered Linda B. and Charles Bukowski walking almost hand in hand. And Linda says to Hank, "Oh, darling, here's that guy that writes that newspaper you like to read." And he turns around to me and he says, "Oh, so you're the one." I only read 2 newspapers, yours in the daily racing form. And he sort of smiled and turned around and walked away. And I was stunned. And I was waiting for him to have another clever line. But he didn't. And I thought for a long time about this, and I said to myself, this is like the most famous poet in America who just paid me like a huge fucking compliment, and I had nothing to say in response to it. So what am I supposed to do? Well, much later, when we had a conversation, I actually asked him if he would give us an endorsement with that. And he did. And it's the only commercial endorsement that he had ever given anybody ever in his entire life. And when we sat down to actually take the picture for the endorsement and all of that, a very interesting exchange took place. And as much as some people who are now involved in the San Pedro Chamber of Commerce and whatnot would like to put up a statue to the prominent gentleman for commercial reasons. I've had a few second thoughts about all of that, but I did at the time write this song, which I'm going to perform for you right now, about Bukowski.
Wow, that's a treat.
So it may come as a shock to some of you, but I've been playing guitar for almost as much time as I've been doing newspaper stuff. I tend to write more editorials than I do songs. Well, he walked up to me, he said, "Man, aren't you the one? Oh, that writes that newspaper, don't see how you ever get it done. You know, I only read 2 papers, yours and the Daily Racing Form. Well, I held my breath, waiting for the other line to drop. But he was actually sincere in what he said and just stopped. He was real in what he said to me, for sure. Yeah, like a line from one of his poems, burning in water, brutal and pure. Hey, but what matters most is how well, hey, you walk through this fire. boast is how well you walk through the fire. Well, we sat around smoking, joking, and drinking some beers. Stuff about love, life, women, indecisions, and fears. Then he leaned in real close. He said, "Man, what would it take to sell out?" I wasn't sure what he's talking about. Or was this some kind of strange, humorous bluff? But you know, in my eyes, I actually did start to count. But before I could speak, he did interrupt. No matter how much they pay you, man, it's never enough. Because what matters most is how well you walk through this fire. Oh yeah, doesn't matter if you're living or you're dying. Oh, whether you're standing there telling me the truth or you're just lying. What matters most is how well you walk through this fire. Well, the news came early that Bukowski died. There were lots of people who came to pay homage. There were plenty more who wanted to stand by the shadow of his bride. Hey, but I just want to remember him writing poems. Like he was striking matches. The words fell on the floor just like the spent ones. Evidence that the flame had once burned. But there's a lot of people who try to light spent matches. More who want to go out and drink themselves insane. Once a man is kissed by hottest fire, oh, for his whole life he remembers those lips of